Hey everyone, it's Spooktober again, so let's do some thematic tutorial, and I really hope you will enjoy this one, and if you do, please don't forget to leave that like, and if you're new around here, hit that subscribe. So let's jump right into empty Blender file, and first of all, we'll create some objects that we can use for a little bit of sculpting. So we can leave the camera in place, but let's get rid of the light and the cube. So let's drag a selection, press X and choose delete, and now let's press Shift A and we'll add a plane. Now tab into the edit mode and press S, then Y, and scale it down on Y-axis, like this. And now we'll basically just get rid of all of the vertices except one. So let's drag a selection like this, press X and delete vertices. And now let's go to the modifiers panel and let's add mirror modifier, like this, and let's choose clipping. Now let's select this vertex, press E, then X, and extrude towards the middle. And now we can select this one right here. Let's look from the front. So let's press E and extrude it like this. And now let's press E and we'll create a cutout like that a few times. And now let's press E again a few times to join this in the middle. Now we can just drag a selection like this and make this larger, or scale it on X-axis by pressing S then X. So, we get some shape that we like the most. But I think this is quite okay. And maybe let's bring this down a notch, like that. And now we can press A to select all and press F to fill. And now E to extrude. So we're at the original thickness of the plane. And now, just to be safe, press A and Shift N to recalculate the normals. Now we'll need some more geometry here, but we'll see how this works with modifiers. So let's collapse this and let's add a bevel modifier like this. And let's add one more segment here. Let's increase the angle to something like 50. And in the geometry setting, let's switch this to arc, even though this is not probably required here. And let's now tab out and let's add subdivision surface modifier. And here let's increase the levels to 2, and you can see weird subdivision happening there, and that's the place we need to add some geometry. So let's press 1 for front view, tap into the edit mode. And we can just press K for a knife tool, snap it right here, press A to snap the angle, and press C to enable cut through, left click and then enter to confirm. And you can see this is much cleaner right now because the geometry goes through the middle there. If you feel like this is too fast for you or you don't understand some core concepts, make sure to check out my courses. I carefully designed them to take you from beginner skills through low poly illustration all the way to full character illustration, textured environments, and much more. And I build the courses as creative projects, each with its own style. And every time there's a new technique or something needs explaining, we stop for a while and you get an in-depth explanation. But in the end, you still get a full project result. So if you're interested, please check out the link in the description. Of course, you can add some more, but I think it's not necessary right here. This will be all just fine. So let's right-click, shade smooth. And now let's press Shift A and let's add a plane. Tab into the edit mode, let's scale it on X-axis. So press S then X. And now press E to extrude. S for scale, I for inset, and E to extrude again, and again S to scale it down. Now we can tab out. Let's look from the front. We can maybe make it lower, so S then Z, and scale it down, and press Ctrl A and apply that scale like this. And now we'll hold Shift, select this object, and transfer the bevel. So click here, copy to select it, and then transfer the subdivision as well. But as you can see, we have some shading issues right there. So let's select that object, tab into the edit mode, and we'll add some supporting loops by pressing Ctrl R to get some emotional support for our subdivision modifier, like here. And from the side as well, this should be okay. And now you can play with the bevel. So you can lower the amount to make it a little bit more sharper, like this. I think they'll be much better, and here as well. So let's modify this so it's a little bit sharper. And now we'll move this up. So let's look from the front by pressing 1 on a numpad, press G then Z, and move this up here. And we can make it smaller. Press Ctrl A and apply the scale. Now tab into the edit mode and we'll press 3 for face select, or click right here. Select these two faces by holding shift and adding to selection, and we can press I to inset and press B to enable boundary, and just create an inset like this. And now here we can enable auto merge, press 1 for vertex select, or again you can change the selection right there. And we'll select this one, press G twice and just slide it here so it connects. We don't need that extra vertex there, and here we can move this up tiny bit. And now press 3 for face select again, select these two faces by holding shift and press E and extrude this inside. Now here again, as you can see, there will be some shading issues, so we'll press Ctrl R again and add some more loops, and right up here as well. This works nicely. We don't need to care about topology in any way right now because we'll convert this and sculpt anyway. So the last two things I want to do is to create some little details. So let's shift and right click here to move the cursor. So shift A and let's add the text object. Now press R, then X and 90 and confirm with enter to rotate 90 degrees. So let's go to the text settings and we'll switch this to center and here to the middle. Let's press S to make this smaller, and I think a thicker font will be fine, so I'll just go ahead here and choose some from my fonts folder. It should by default offer you to pick the fonts from the Windows font directory if you're on a Windows PC. So let's tab into the edit mode here, let's delete this and let's enter RIP. Tab out, and here let's go to geometry and we'll extrude this like this. Or we don't need to do it like that. Let's go back by pressing Ctrl Z and we can just right click and convert to mesh, and now we can tab into the edit mode and just extrude like that. Press A and shift N to recalculate normals. Now let's look from the front and we can move these around a little bit. So press 1 for vertex select, click away and then hit L to select only the linked vertices, press R to rotate a little bit and G to move it around. And now let's click away and let's press L again and do it like this here as well, maybe make it a little bit larger. We'll see how that works. Now tab out and press S to scale it all up. Like here, press Ctrl A and apply the scale. And now shift right click here. Let's press Shift A and we'll add a plane. Now tab into the edit mode. Press S to scale this down, R, X and 90 to rotate 90 degrees. And press E to extrude. And now we can press 3 for face select. Alt click this loop to select all around. And now Alt E and extrude individual faces and do something like this here. And now let's enable X-ray view. Let's select the bottom one, press G then Z and move this down like this. And I think this works just fine, so we can tab out. And yeah, disable the X-ray view. We make it a little bit smaller, push it down. And again, Ctrl A and apply the scale. And maybe we can make this a little bit larger. Okay. So this is almost prepared for sculpting. So let's just work with the geometry a little bit more. So we can go ahead here and enable wireframe overlays so we can see what's happening there. And now let's select this one here and right click and just convert to mesh. And they will apply all the modifiers. There's no modifier left here. But right now we want to remesh this a little bit. So let's go to the data properties and let's go to remesh, and we'll use the voxel remesh. And I think something like 0.005 should be quite dense enough for sculpting here. So let's click voxel remesh. Let's wait a little bit. And yeah, this is quite dense, and I think this will work nicely with some sculpting. Maybe it's a little bit too dense. Like if you want this, if this, for example, slows down your PC too much, maybe just go back and go 0.01. This is still quite dense, but I will go with the original 0.05 and remesh it, and do the same thing with this one. So right click, convert to mesh, so we apply all the modifiers, and now 0.005 voxel size and remesh. And you can see this is why we didn't care about the topology too much, because we want this, you know, dense mesh ready for sculpting. And now let's do the same thing here. And the same thing for the letters. Okay, now we can go ahead and disable wireframe overlay. And this is still shaded smooth, but you can see this is caused by, you know, the remesh, but we'll take care of that in the sculpt mode. So let's just go to the sculpting workspace here, and we're already in the sculpt mode with the object we had selected as last. So it's the text right here. So I just want to go to the object mode and select this one here and go back to the sculpt mode. Now, as you can see, I just dragged this, so I have 2 rows or 2 columns of these tools. And here you can use mouse. So for example, I'm still on my mouse here, and the first tool I want to use is the smooth tool, because I want to get rid of those like choppy geometry. So we can press F and make this larger or smaller. So let's make it quite large and confirm. And now you can modify the strength here. You can make it really subtle and then just click with the mouse, maybe a little bit stronger, and you can see the smoothing will happen for you, but it will be a little bit too tedious. So what I like to do is to use my tablet and then, you know, apply the strength with the pressure. So, but be really subtle. I will even drop this down a little bit, and we can just, you know, smudge a little bit. You don't want to go too hard here because you don't want to round the geometry too much. You still want those sharp edges there, even though we'll sculpt through those as well a little bit later. So, you know, just run through your object and, you know, smooth it a little bit like this. Here as well on the other side, you can see this is still a little bit choppy here as well. So like this. And now I'll press Ctrl Tab, switch to object mode, select this one, Ctrl Tab, and go back to the sculpt mode. And basically do the same thing here. Here it's not so pronounced, so I will just quickly run over it with the smooth tool. Nothing too fancy here. And again, Ctrl Tab and switch object, and here just a subtle touch of that smooth, and you will see how this nicely rounds and becomes smoother. And let's do the same thing here. Okay, so this is now ready. So let's Ctrl Tab to object mode, select this here, go to sculpt mode. Let's press F, make this smaller, and let's pick the scrape tool. It's one of my favorite. And basically you can just create edges like this with the scrape tool. So this will look like it's carved out of stone. And you can just do like these surfaces here and there. Okay, and here we can do this one. Okay, and now we'll take care of the inside here. I want to make this a little bit sharper there. So you can, for example, use this tool right here to create a crease, you know, and edit 2 planes at once. Okay, let's make this a little bit sharper. And be very subtle here. Okay, and now we can choose the scrape tool again and do this side here, but let's make the tool smaller and let's make this a bit sharper, so you get this sharp edge right there. And one important thing, don't dwell in one place too much. Always move on. Just do a few strokes and, you know, move on onto the next part. And then you can just zoom out and do smaller adjustments here and there. So basically just pick the tool, decide on what you want to do with it, but then, you know, do like one full round with the tool and then go back into the details if it's necessary. So yeah, I quite like this. I think this will be enough. Now, one thing we can do here to add a little bit of a texture is to use the blob brush. Press F to make it really small. You can see this is how it works. But if you hold Control, you can kind of cut into the surface. So it goes to the opposite way. So we can do like these little dots here and there, and then press F again, make it even smaller. Let me hold Control. I think this will look really nice in the end, and maybe one or two larger ones. Okay, now let's hold Control Tab, switch to the object mode, select the cross, and back to the sculpt mode. And here again, I'll just use the scrape tool to create these edges like this. Okay, I like it. So let's move on here and do the same thing. Okay, don't forget to save often. And let's now go ahead and finish with the last part right here. Okay, and yeah, basically we can add some more detail here with the blob brush. Press F to make this smaller, hold Control, and do these small bends here and there. And the key here is, again, you know, not to overdo it, not do it too much dense, because this is supposed to be, you know, very simple and stylized. And now finally you can go into smaller details. So if I go back here with the sculpt mode, you can pick the clay, and for example, if you want to make a dent here, so the clay works that it basically just adds material to your sculpt, but if you hold Control, you can go to the other side, so you can just kind of chisel into your model. But again, you need to be quite subtle with this. And here we can, you know, create a little bit of damage. Now we can use this tool to edit those two planes a little bit, and then use the scrape brush to make it a little bit sharper here and here as well. And then maybe smooth out things around it. And again, use scrape to kind of better define those edges. So there you have, you know, a little bit of a cut in your stone. So you can just go around your object, make few of these, but again, just don't overdo it. Sometimes one little detail, you know, can be enough. So that's the sculpting. We can now go back to the layout view, and don't forget to save your project again. And we can just select everything here, press 1 for front view, press G then Z, move this up a little bit because I want to like incorporate it into the background a little bit. Let's hold Shift S, reset cursor to world origin, and let's press Shift A and let's add a circle. And we'll edit this to 64 vertices, tab into the edit mode. Let's make it larger and press Ctrl F and choose grid fill. It will fill it with mesh like this, and we can now press 1 for vertex select, select this one in the middle, enable proportional editing and press G then Z and start moving up and increase, you know, the influence of the proportional editing with the mouse wheel or like this. And then maybe make this smaller and do like, you know, smaller bumps here and there so it looks more natural. Now let's hold Alt, select this loop, now Alt and Shift and select this other one, and let's continue by adding one more row of loops like this, and now press S then Z and 0. So it's flat on the outside. Now press N for the side panel and let's reset the location of this to 0. They'll place it right down. Now we can tab out, let's press Shift A and we can add a plane and just scale it up. That'll be our background, and here we can select this one, press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision surface modifier, right click and shade smooth. And now we can press 0 on a numpad for camera view and just go to the view and camera to view. And now we can control this using our viewport controls. So let's do something like this here. And don't forget to disable this. And now select the plane, tab into the edit mode, go for edge select, select the far edge and press E then Z and extrude it up. Select this one again, press Ctrl B and increase number of segments with the mouse wheel and confirm, tab out, and we can right click and shade this smooth so we have some infinite background, and we can press R then Z and rotate it a little bit towards the camera. And now finally we can add, you know, a circle, press R then X and 90 to rotate 90 degrees, press G then Z, move it up, and now position it slightly to the side. We can tab in, press F to fill with the face, tab back out, and let's move it further back. So press G then Y, move it somewhere here. Now let's make it larger to create like a moon right here. Okay, now press Ctrl B, limit the preview only for camera bounds, go to render settings, switch to cycles, enable GPU, and I enable denoising and switch that one to GPU as well, and reduce the samples to something like 512. And now let's press Shift A and let's add a light, area light, press G and Z, move this up and make this larger, quite large in fact, and let's switch this to disk. And then we can switch the pivot point to 3D cursor and just rotate it towards the back so we have some nice backlight here, and increase the power to something like 1500, and let's press Z and choose rendered to see how that works. And we can press G then Z twice on this light to, you know, bring this higher up. But we're looking at this backlight right here that will create this nice rim light, and you can see how this nicely connects you know, with the plane. So we can now select this, press Shift D, right click to release, and press Alt R to reset the rotation, and just move it back here. Switch this to median point and press R twice to rotate it towards the background a little bit more, so we have some background backlight as well. And now here we can add new material and switch this to emission and do like 5. And I think one more area light from the side will be fine. So let's select this one. Again, we'll switch this to 3D cursor, press Shift D, and then RZ and rotate here, and let's look from the side there. And we can rotate it until we start to see, because right here it's too in the dark, but if you rotate from the side, we'll start seeing the light hitting the front just a tiny bit like this. And we can press Alt-R and reset the rotation so it goes, you know, a little bit more top down, and then reduce this to 500. So yeah, something like this, and maybe make it a little bit sharper. Okay, now select the background, create a new material, and let's make it darker and increase the roughness. And do the same material here, so it nicely blends together. And yeah, I think this looks quite nice. I think I will leave it black and white. So let's expand this, and let's switch to shader editor. And now let's select the stone, create a new material, and we'll create something like an edge mask here. So let's press Shift A and we'll go for ambient occlusion and switch this to inside and only local and reduce samples. Now if you Control Shift and click this, if you have Node Wrangler active, you will see the preview of that node. If you don't have it active, just go Preferences and check your add-ons. If you see Node Wrangler here, I have it right here and it's checked on. If you don't see it here, go Get Extensions, search here, and then you can just, you know, locate it and install like any other extension, and then in the add-ons you should be able to see it. Now let's press Shift A and let's add a matte node, and we'll switch this here, and we'll switch this to 1, and we'll subtract. So we'll basically subtract from 1, and now we can modify this distance, and then again another matte node. And if it's greater than some threshold that we will choose, it will appear here. So this way we can detect edges like this. And now you're basically playing with only those values. You change the distance and you modify the threshold. And again, by holding Control and Shift, you can click and preview your nodes. And now with this done, we can just press Shift A, add a mix color node, plug it into the factor and change the other one to white and make this a little bit darker. Okay, and just connect it to the color, and don't forget to hold Control Shift and click the shader so it connects, and now increase the roughness so you have, you know, some visual interest on the material there. Now you can add the same material here as well, but probably you won't be able to see the edge mask, so you can duplicate it here and change these values. So you need to go lower on the distance and, you know, play with the threshold a little bit probably. So it detects it on the side, and we can then use the same one here and again duplicate it and modify the values a little bit like that. And let's try the first one here. I think it works nicely. Okay, and finally we can press Shift A, add a cube, tab into the edit node, make it larger, press G and Z, move it up. Let's tab out, let's call this fog so we can recognize it here, and let's enable this filter as well. And now let's create a new material. Let's remove the surface shader and let's add volume shader, principled volume. And now here we can go something like 0.0115. You can see we added a little bit of that fog here. And now we can just disable it in the edit. So we are able to select everything inside. And now we can play with those lights. So for example, if you don't want that dispersion here, you can go to the light settings and disable visibility for the volume scatter. But I like it there. I just think we can make it a little bit larger, maybe move it up. Quite okay. And now we can go to the render settings and in the color management, switch the contrast to high contrast and play with the exposure here. So yeah, that's it for today's Spooktober tutorial, and I really hope you enjoyed this one. And again, if you did, please leave that like, and if you're new around here and you want to learn more, hit that subscribe. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.